Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham.
Hi everyone, welcome to Road to Cheltenham. As ever, we have got a packed show. We're even going to broaden our horizons to encompass the staying hurdlers later on in the show. But first of all, Ruby, Josh and I are going to be talking about what was a fabulous weekend's chasing amongst the intermediate and staying chasers, and those distinctions will be important, and how it's teed up the King George at Christmas. It was a magnificent weekend, really interesting. I didn't really know where to look.
No, there was. Look, loads of different winners at different venues, some great races, some predictable races, but it was an enjoyable weekend anyway.
Absolutely. And Josh, you've been asking the roadies to look ahead. What is it that you asked them to do?
Yeah, what a weekend of racing, and what a weekend for the King George. I love the King George. It'd be if I was getting into the racing and if I wanted to own a horse, it'd be the second race I'd want to win behind something like the Gold Cup. I absolutely love the race, and someone clearly at Racing TV has backed it, because I even got a uniform as a result. So the budget has extended. But I asked the roadies, out of those four performances, Gallic Warrior and Factorfile entwined in one, Django by the Jukebox Man, who do people fancy at this stage? We've got a month to go. It looks extremely competitive, and plenty of people have already sent their questions in.
Absolutely. So we're going to have a look at a selection of them, and that's going to help us focus our minds on what everybody's thinking out there and what the themes are coming out from the weekend's races. So over to you.
Yes, we've already got a few. Nicholas Bragg says Gallic Warrior and Factorfile may have ran their King George. The Jukebox Man was barely out of second gear and looked great. I thought this was a really interesting question, because they went so hard in the John Durkan, and it appeared to be, I'm sure we'll talk about it in the rest of the episode, but could they have left their King George behind?
They could have, but equally they could improve from it too. You don't know that till you go again the next day. It was a big performance, but no, I thought both finished well enough and both went by the line and a good bit past the post to say that they will get over their exertions on Sunday.
And also they're second season, they're not second season novices, they're already graduated into the big league, whereas the Jukebox Man and Django By, for that matter, are different type of horses, sort of stepping stone in. Funtime Freckle, I noticed his name was. So okay. I always enjoy the handles.
So many good handles. This one's Bad Boy of Bowls.
Oh, we had him last week.
We did
Back
have him
again.
last
Welcome.
week. He thinks that Django By is very similar to last year's winner, Banbridge. He puts them very, very similar types, still both unexposed of offences and improving with every run. I think he'll play the waiting game, and his speed will come into play at Kempton when others have cried enough. I think he's saying that they're going to go too hard out in front, and it looks like we're going to have some pace. Jukebox Man, Ile Francais, possibly Gallic Warrior, could he go forward? Are we guaranteed a really good pace in the King George?
No, I wouldn't think so.
No. I think that's the only way that Ile Francais can go, but will he be able to? Gallic Warrior, they've got a choice.
Yeah, choice with Gallic Warrior. I don't know, Gallic Warrior ran away in the John Durkan. I couldn't see him. Well, maybe they will make it, but I wouldn't think so. And then you have Jukebox Man, who made it because no one else wanted to be in But no, there's not a massive. I don't think it'll be a really strong year-round race. But then again, when you think that way, so do jockeys. And all of a sudden you end up getting a few competing for what I think will be a soft lead. Yeah, absolutely. I really like Django By. He's such an unassuming horse, isn't he? And just gets the job done all the time.
Yeah, so good to see him up in trip. And he is a real King George contender as well. We've got another one from Skoz Tips. He thinks the Jukebox Man, because of his course form, he wanted to really highlight that he's well suited by Kempton. A sharp 3 miles will be ideal for him. And Ben Pauling and Ben Jones are both doing extremely well. He'd back him at 3s, let alone 6s and 7s. I suppose this begs the question, I'll give him 3s if he wants it. You'll give him 3s? There you go.
Note the date and time.
I suppose the question from his fancy is the King George a race for horses for courses? Does it fit in that category?
I think you can definitely make that trend and make that correlation if you want to, but and Cato Star obviously won 5 King Georges, but the first time he went to Kempton, he'd never been there. So I don't know. I think it's a race for pacey horses. Once you have a pacey horse, I think Kempton suits you, but probably doesn't suit. It doesn't. We know it doesn't suit slow horses, so it suits pacey horses.
I quite like flat track horses going there, horses that have shown that pace somewhere similar to Kempton as well.
I'd be more thinking if you've competed at 2, 2.5. Kempton probably does suit you at 3.
You know, it's very interesting. I looked at the stats, and 5 of the last 10 winners had previously won at Kempton, so kind of 50-50,
Okay,
literally.
well, if you want to add to the debate, the Road to Cheltenham hashtag is on the screen, and Josh will be rejoining us later on in the show with your further King George thoughts. When you rejoin us, Ruby and I will be reflecting on the chasers over the weekend. So let's look back on a super weekend's chasing and what that means for the rest of the season. We're going to start with the John Durkan, and I think even for those involved in the race, it was a very different John Durkan for what they might previously have expected for a seasonal debut race.
Yeah, it was. It was running a much higher tempo, but I don't think that was necessarily by design. I think Gallic Warrior just ran away. He charged off with Paul and got running with him, and it was running a much higher tempo than the 2023, 2024 renewals, or any other renewal of a John Durkan, to be honest with you. It's not a traditional way of doing it in Ireland, but that is just Gallic Warrior in front, which raises the question mark, people wondering, oh, he'll jump and go into King George. Horses running away doesn't tend to win King Georges. So I'd be wondering what way Paul would ride him in the King George off the back of what he learned last weekend.
I agree. We'll get on to talking about that. Obviously, he's been more patiently ridden for when he won the Aintree Bowl, for example, which was his best run prior to this effort. But if you look at the entry speeds over the first 4 fences of Gallic Warrior as compared to Factifile and Fast or Slow in the John Durkan from the past 3 years, it's significantly faster, and that changed the race. You tell me how you saw it.
We can look at it. It was just definitely, it played into the horses with speed, and the stayers were just out of their comfort zone from the word go. So Gallic Warrior books out, in fact the file goes with him. Up over the first 2 fences, they're poaching a lead, but it was from the 3rd fence here. You can watch Paul, as he tries to slow Gallic Warrior down, he just runs on with him. Charges down to the 4th fence, which was the last on the first circuit, and you can see the gap he's putting between himself and Factifile. And in the rest of the field, Hartwood, Fast or Slow, Lecky, Watson, Grange, Clare West, they're just about hanging on to the back of Factifile over the first 4. But as they get up the hill, this gap starts to go. He attacks the 5th fence, Gallic Warrior turns the bend at the top of the hill, and when he gets to the descent, he rubbers down the fence number 8 at the bottom of the hill. Now you're thinking, watching this race, and I was in the grandstand watching it live, you're thinking like, a mistake here is going to bottom this fella, and he hits the middle fence down the back. Paul says go on, change his mind, clouts it, and from there on you're thinking, Factifile will pick him up. The next jump looked empty. Now Paul, in fairness to him, sits up then and slows Gallic Warrior down, which allowed Factifile to close up without Factifile having to do any running. So as such, Gallic Warrior came back, and I thought here, watching it at the second last fence, Factifile attacks it, wings by Gallic Warrior. You're thinking this is all over. But Gallic Warrior, in fairness to him, digs in and battles back. Now I didn't probably think Gallic Warrior was as good a horse as he is. I know how good a horse Factifile is. I thought it was a wonderful contest, and they both dig in. But I guess to answer what other people are thinking is, will that leave a prolonged mark on the two of them for the season? I like the way that both of them went by the line. I know it's downhill after the line, but they both went up across the road to pull up. They didn't go by the line like you've seen in Betfair Chases, where they go by the winning post and they turn in the gate. They didn't. They went on and ran out a good bit to pull up. So, look, you're hoping that they had enough conditioning done that they will get over that. It's 5 weeks to Christmas. But that's the art of training. That's Willie Mullins' job now, is to get them to recover and have them spot on at Christmas.
It's a race that has slightly polarised opinion from the immediate reaction, which was one of the best races I've ever seen in my life.
It's a great horse race. There's no doubt about that.
And, well, there were only 2 horses involved and the rest of them were at the back. I think both things apply myself. You had 2 horses that are capable over 2.5 miles and also stay a bit further, and had a definite Christmas target to get to.
Yeah, you do, but that was on paper. That was even the betting of the race. There was 2 and the rest. And that's the way it transpired. I'd say the one person who should be really happy was Martin Braslett with Fast or Slow. I thought he looked rusty, having not run in 12 months, and I thought he will definitely step forward. I know the way you're thinking. Yeah, look, and it's interesting listening to Keith Donoghue and Gavin Cromwell after. They're happy enough with him as a starting point, but he took time to build up last year.
Do you want to hear from Keith Donoghue?
Yeah.
Donoghue, we can do so directly.
Just flat out the whole way. Came home, kept going. Gave me a better feel in the race this year than he did last year, so I'd be happy.
I do think from the outside, it looked better than last year. Last year, he was learning his jumping on the job, wasn't he? Whereas this time, he made a few sticky, rusty errors early, but he was fine, I thought.
He did, and I did think that was interesting. And the yard is not flying, so the yard is going to be going better at a certain point in the season, there's no doubt about that. But yeah, I think there's loads of positives to take from it. Definitely Fast or Slow is probably the one that'll get overlooked for his run.
I thought he ran really, really well. Whether he'd like a King George, I'm not so sure, because that isn't, I mean, Martin Brassil was saying he's a stayer and he likes 2 mile pace. Don't they go quite pacely in the King George as well?
They do, but again, it's what goes that pace in this year's King George, and you saw where Banbridge came from last year to win with Paul Townend. So, you know, I don't know, Fast or Slow probably does appeal to me as an outsider in the King George, yeah.
Let's talk about the criticism of the John Durkan, which essentially has been the ones at the back just had a school round. What would you say to people who are of that view?
I wouldn't agree personally. It was definitely a first run and a starting point, but I think everything at the back at Grade 1 level, trying to follow Gaelic Warrior and Factifile, looked like 3 milers, looked like stairs. They were just going too fast.
So it's unable rather than unwilling?
Yeah, I think unable. And you listen to all of those jockeys, I spoke to them all on the way back in, and every one of them said the same thing. Just going too fast for me, just going too fast for me. They were going hard, and they were going too hard for horses that want to go before them.
Particularly on seasonal debut as well. Yeah,
definitely.
Okay, so when you were breaking down that race, my feeling was that you were saying, why didn't Factifile win?
I think when he jumps to second last, and you're looking at it with the way Gaelic Warrior ran early in the race, and you're looking at him making a mistake, the empty jump at the last ditch, and then the way Factifile pings the second last and go by him, it looks all over. I don't know, did he get outstayed? Which is a mad thing to say about a horse that won a Ryanair, but it looked like he did.
Some people have argued he had to use up energy to get to Gaelic Warrior, whereas I felt that Paul Townend was just waiting after that mistake.
Yeah, I thought Paul came back rather than Mark went after. That's the way I read it, personally looking at it. I thought Paul, when he made the mistakes, slowed down and just waited till Mark caught up with him, but I thought he came back rather than Mark chased him down. I thought Mark got back into the race easily and efficiently. I even think the finishing speed percentage shows you that Mark was very efficient in how he rode Factifile. I think he's less of an excuse than Gaelic Warrior, who to me was inefficient in how he raced early.
Although it was a good reaction, I think, from Paul Townend in terms of that to that mistake and what to do next.
Oh, yeah. Would you expect any different?
No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. So, Gaelic Warrior to the King George. You've raised it a couple of times. How will he be ridden at Kempton?
I don't know, and I think it's one Paul will have to think about.
And it will be Paul?
I would have thought so. But you again, what's the last horse to run away and win?
Well, I suppose the horse that you would have most thought that might be able to do it was Il Est Français, but he was not quite the same horse when he came back for a King George, was he?
Didn't win. I just think that is there. With a horse in front of him, Gaelic Warrior does settle. And I wonder what way they will ride him.
Okay.
Ponderable, Lydia.
Factifile. I think there's an assumption that he won't be heading to Kempton over Christmas. Surely he should.
Well, I walked off the stand thinking, they're 2 Kempton horses. That's what they look like. And last weekend, you saw the 2 of them. You saw the jukebox man, Jan go by. You saw loads of horses that looked like potential King George horses. And I thought it was wonderful that you got to see them, 2 of them clash, but you got to see others that are going to come in to create a better clash in the King George. And I think that's why you have a programme. That's why you had all the races we had last weekend.
You were arguing this last week.
I was. I do think you need that spread. It needs to have building points. And I think that last weekend sets up Christmas brilliantly.
Well, you tee me up nicely to talk about Django Bai, who won the 1965 chase and had Gidley Park, Pic D'Orhy, Master Chewy and Il Est Français running poorly behind him.
Yeah, but it looked like the trip suited Django Bai much better. I mean, he had the pace to jump out and make it down over the first couple in an Arkle, then got badly outpaced. He came home like a train. I thought he was impressive at Ascot, and there's no doubt he's going to improve from that run. But he was good, and he is an Arkle winner. He might have got it handed to him, but he still won it.
Yeah, absolutely. He finished off that race strongly at Ascot, didn't he?
He does. He looks like 3 miles would suit him down to the ground, doesn't he?
I described him as unassuming. I just like how he doesn't waste time over his fences. You know, for going up to 3 miles, he's just efficient, isn't he?
Very would be the word I would use. Efficient more than unassuming.
Yeah. Okay. Il Est Français. I mean, Tom George now has him. They were hoping to have ironed out his problems, but that's back-to-back pull-ups now, and you start to worry about a horse who has bled more than once in the past.
Yeah, definitely.
Not at Ascot, by the way, I should say.
No, he was disappointing. He's a point to prove, but sure, that's That's sport in general, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Always disappointments.
How about if we move on to Haydock now and talk about another horse that was graduating out of Novice Company from last season, but only on the back of 2 previous starts. This was the Jukebox Man who ran in the graduation chase against the Grand National 4th from last year.
Yeah, and Nappers Hill outside him, the 2 at the back, Hansard and Dublin didn't get involved too much. But look, the Jukebox Man got to go along at his own speed in front. They didn't go mad quick. It was a steady run affair. Bit high there when he backed off. Maybe he'd preferred if he'd gotten in closer, but he did show at Kempton last year that he has a great jump in him. Shortened himself nicely at the second last in the back straight, quick in the jumps the ditch, and from down the straight then it was a sprint, and one fence in particular swings this. He pings the third last, Rocco gets in underneath it, and the race is over as such. Jukebox Man pings the second last. John then grabs a hold of Barocco, but he's never going to catch the Jukebox Man, who just got it easy in front. He won't get it as handily as that in the King George, even if he's the only one who wants to make the run, and they will go at him earlier, they will push him sooner, but he's a good horse going the right direction. He was possibly unlucky in an Albert Bartlett. He was good last year when he won the Cotto Star. He has to improve again, there's no doubt about it, but he's entitled to be going there.
Definitely. I was really impressed with him when he won the Cotto Star. He's only had the 3 chase starts. It's going to be, I mean, that was him controlling the race in the front, jumping superbly, but he was never pressed.
No.
Iroko was ridden defensively. You know, he was able to control the race from up front. It is going to be very, very, very different.
It is, and even like you can stand there and say, well, I don't see him making it. And if he does get to saunter along in front of the King George, which is unlikely, it's just where they'll press him. In the King George, even if he does get to go steady, he'll only get to go steady for a circuit, and then they will get up on top of him, and it'll be competitive and yahoo for the last circuit. So no matter what way, he won't be able to control the King George.
No. This is the betting for the Ladbrokes King George, the 6th chase, for which Gallic Warrior is 6-4, Django Bay is 3-1, the Jukebox Man 7-2, Factor File is 5s. Is that built into an expectation that he's not going to be there?
I'd imagine. Although, look, pricing races wouldn't be my strong point.
No, nor mine.
So I'm not so sure. Banbridge at 14, Zile France, fast or slow. Look, I think he's probably the one who got overlooked at the weekend, fast or slow.
Mm. And of course, we've got the 1-2 potentially from last season in the King George, Banbridge and Ile Francais. And we've also potentially got a French raider. Ile Francais is British now. Cocorico rather, for Emmanuel Cléo might well be coming over after he was second in the Prix de la Justin. I haven't got that quite right.
Winter version of the Grand Steep.
He's been second in his last 4 races. It'll be interesting to see if he does come over. Right, so those are King George contenders. We're now going to look at another excellent staying chase for the weekend, which doesn't feature King George contenders. It was the Betfair Chase, and Grey Dawning won it, getting his revenge on Royale Pagaille.
Yeah, and he got it in no uncertain terms. I guess the disappointment for me was Haiti Couleurs. From the first fence, you're kind of thinking, he's not going. Sean had to ride him away from the first fence, had to fire him up into the second, and again he was off it, and had to get him into the middle and get him competitive so early in the race just to keep in it. So he was never really going. Royal Pagaille and Handstands went a long, stellar story, sat in at the outside and the back, but Grey Dawning was always cantering down the inside, jumped with the same efficiency and bravery as he did last year. Only this year, Harry Skelton had no intention of going anywhere near Charlie Deutsch in front, and look, at well beyond halfway when Haiti Couleurs dropped out, but he was so disappointing compared to Grey Dawning, who just waited longer this year, and Royal Pagaille didn't get him into a battle, didn't get into a slog with him, and the classier, faster horse won the race. Handstands, Lydia, probably a bit disappointed.
Yeah.
I'd have thought so.
Yeah, this was his first taste of the big league, wasn't it? I don't really know what he is, to be honest, just yet.
I thought he was tame from the last for a horse who'd had a run at Carlisle, so you can't really be blaming fitness. I just thought his finishing effort was a bit tame.
Whilst I admire Grey Dawning, and we're going to go on to talk about him in a moment, but I just admired Royale Pagaille. I mean, I know that Haydock is his manner, but talk about being carried out on your shield in conditions that didn't really suit the old boy. He tried and tried and tried.
He did, and his jumping let him down a little bit up the straight, didn't it? But as you said, he just didn't get the rein that he requires, but he still ran to a high level, and he shows that he's still fitting well, and they're having good fun with him.
Grey Dawning heads towards his target in the Boodles Cheltenham Gold Cup via one stepping stone race. It's most likely the Cotswold Chase, but Dan Skelton also brought up the possibility of the Savills in Leopardstown. I'm expecting him to turn up at Cheltenham myself. I don't know about you.
I am too. I mean, Dan is trying to beat Willie Mullins in the British Trainers' Championship. I can't see him going to Leopardstown to try and win 100 grand when he could maybe win 100 in Cheltenham. I'd say that win prize money would be sought after in the UK.
And also you'd be surrounded at Leopardstown, wouldn't you? Absolutely surrounded.
Yeah, he would, but sure, it'd be great if he did come money. I just can't see it.
And I think for many people, they've just readily dismissed Grey Dawning as Cheltenham Gold Cup candidate, and I really don't feel that's fair. I feel like he left his season behind in the slog in the Betfair Chase, had to be built back up, didn't go to Cheltenham, had to go to Kelso and went to Aintree. I felt didn't jump as well as he can do against Gallic Warrior, but as we've just seen, that was no disgrace, was it?
No, it wasn't, and he did look. I'd say Grey Dawning standing in Skelton's this week is a good bit of happier horse this year than he was this time last year.
I'm sure he is, But I think I quite like to see Gallic Warrior in a Gold Cup. That German stamina, I'd like to see it.
Yeah, it could well be, and he looked in the stayer to me in the John Durkan.
He did. Warrior. We're going to focus on Grey Dawning though, because what a difference a year makes.
So for Analyse this week, we are going to look at Harry Skelton, and each of us in lives get to learn lessons, but how many of us, or get taught lessons even, but how many of us actually learn the lesson that we've been taught? Well, Harry Skelton most definitely did, because if you watch him in 12 months, and it was plainly obvious to the eye how he just kept taking Grey Dawning back out of this year's renewal of the Betfair Chase. No more so than at the back of the third last when he hauls him back and parks him on Charlie Deutsch's tail. Whereas 12 months before, he got upsides him. He kept forcing Royal Pagaille, jumped by him at the second last. This year, he just landed at the second last and took him back, still on the bridle, whereas 12 months ago, he'd been off the bridle. And look, there's no doubt Harry Skelton thought he left the race behind him last year, but as I said, in life, we all learn lessons, but we all get taught lessons, but you have to learn them, and he learned it, and he executed it brilliantly at the weekend.
I think Dan said in the winners' enclosure to Niall Hannity at Haydock that maybe the Harry of 10 years ago, would have gone sooner, wouldn't have just sat there. And he was making the point, and you've made this point as well, that experience is the key to becoming at the top of your game. Yeah,
but it's also analysing yourself. And there's no doubt that Harry Skelton analyses what he does. And when you're analysing yourself, most people look at winners and analyse technique and style, but if you're being honest with yourself, it's losers you should be analysing. And what did I do wrong? And there's no doubt, like Dan said, the Harry Skelton of 10 years ago, well, the Harry Skelton of 12 months ago went too soon, let alone the one 10 years ago. But he is still, even at his age, willing to look at himself and be honest with himself as to what he's done wrong and correct it. And that's admirable. And you could see in Harry's reaction to the victory, and I know that Bridget had recently given birth, and so there were a whole load of emotions that were going on there. But it was also to do with that feeling of redemption, that feeling that 12 months earlier, I need to right this wrong here. Yeah, and not everyone gets the chance to put that right, and he did. He did. Satisfying. Okay. Ruby was talking about Haiti Couleurs in the early stages of the Betfair Chase. I was interested to find out what Rebecca Curtis thought about the performance. She spoke to Jess Stafford about it at Exeter the following day.
An absolute no-show yesterday for him. As you saw, he was beaten as soon as the tapes went down, didn't turn up at all.
Was that it, the moment? And he likes to go forward, doesn't he? Does Sean always think the moment it began, it was sort of always on the back foot?
I nearly knew travelling there. He's a horse that gets really revved up, sweaty. He was very quiet going there. Look, he's just had an off day. I don't think it was anything to do with grade or race ability. And he ran in Newbury only 2.5 weeks earlier. Sean didn't hit him. We think he had an easyish race, but he obviously didn't. It's taken a lot out of him. I think he put so much into his racing that he needs plenty of time in between, which he didn't get. So we put a line through that, and I know he's still a good horse. We just get it right the next day.
And for plans going forward, does that change things? Are you going to give him a little bit more time than you were anticipating now?
I do actually fancy the Welsh National for him, which is, you know, another 5 or so weeks away, which he hasn't had a hard race in Haydock. Sean's pulled him up. If we can freshen him up and get him back to his best, you know, in the next 5 weeks, that will be an option for him, I think, going there.
I definitely agree with Rebecca's analysis of that, and I was looking at the spacing between his races previously, and actually 2.5 weeks is the quickest turnaround that he's ever had. Yeah,
that backfired because, as Rebecca said, it wasn't anything to do with where he was in the race. He was never in the race.
No, right from the word go.
From the word go, he just never turned up, and that's horses for you, isn't it? Welsh National. He turns up fresh and well in the Welsh National. He'll take a bit of following around Chepstow. I
agree, but Rebecca was saying that that wasn't a measure. What happened at Betfair Chase, not to measure his ability to deal with grade 1 chasing and all of those kind of things. Does the selection of the Welsh National next, though, have an impact on the rest of the season? What others might be thinking Haiti Couleurs was? Is that a recalibration, essentially, is what I'm asking you?
No, I don't think so, because if you think at his Christmas programme for him, he's trained in Wales. He's unlikely to go to the Savills. He's not going to go to the King George. The Welsh National is the only other obvious target. That said, if she's not happy with him, you could see him waiting maybe for the Cotswold at the end of January. But I'd say if they are happy with him, the Welsh National is the biggest race in Wales.
All of those factors are obviously key, but it can be a grueler, as was the trendy word from 2 seasons ago. Yeah,
it did, but I suppose that depends on the calibre of horse. It didn't stop Native River.
Yeah. True, it does, and I still think that is a very high quality chaser. Right, so we've wrapped up the chasers, I guess, who have graduated or have been around in the top grade for a long time. We're now going to update ourselves on the novice chasers, and I'm going to start with Kitzbühel's win at Punchestown, Ruby, because this looked like a deep race on paper for a beginner's chase, was it?
It was, and it probably looked on paper a stronger race than the race's Final Demand or Kopek de Board won at Navan. Plenty of horses with chances. Kitzbühel made it down the inside. He had Martin Brazel's runner just outside him, which was something the mountain, Gold in the Mountain. But Kitzbühel was brave. Watch him here at the 4th last fence. He kind of launches out of Paul's hands a little bit. Golden Mountain is just in front. Outside him was the Enabler, Skylord, Where's My Jet, Cade Doughty had jumped in and out. You saw him at the ditch at the bottom of the hill. But off the home turn, it looked like Cade Doughty had come to the fore and was going to win the race. Gets beside the Enabler. But to be fair to Kitzbühel, he rallies back down the inside. Now, I thought early in the race, Lydia, he looked like he wanted to come back to 2 miles. The further the race went on, the more you were thinking Kitzbühel looks like a 3-miler. But I do think there was plenty of strength and depth in this race. The Enabler shuffled the deck, Skylord in the back of the shot, and even Cade Doughty himself, fences. He definitely, even though we did see him make a mistake at the ditch, he jumped better than he did over hurdles, Cade Doughty. But I thought
that wouldn't be difficult, to be fair.
No, it wouldn't be difficult. But I think you will find plenty of winners coming from that contest.
I was looking back at how Willie Mullins views this contest. He's won it with Champagne Fever, Faheen, Asterion Falange, Kilcrut, Gaelic Warrior and Ballyburn.
Yeah, but that's programme again, because when you look at how many beginner chasers there are in Ireland, there aren't as many as you think. And that weekend is always a weekend that Willie starts to get going on. So traditionally it would be won by one of his better novice chasers.
Which of those is Kitzbühel, if you were having to guess at the moment?
Again, I hope he's not Asterion Falange.
Now, you know that Asterion Falange's greatest fan is in the building at the moment. You know that, don't you? You're just trolling him, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
You are.
That's why
you
I
are.
said it.
Can I say that your father's horse ran extremely well,
He did jump
the deck?
well, didn't he?
Yeah.
Shuffle the deck. He's young too, and he'll definitely step forward.
Yeah, I liked him a lot. I thought he'd build. I thought Skylord showed something as well.
So did I do think that that's a race that will produce a lot of winners.
Okay. Earlier in the week, there was also a beginner's chase at Fairyhouse, and this was run at a bit of crawl, wasn't it?
Oh, absolute crawl. Kiss Will was your favourite. In the Ethical Diamond colours, middle towards the back of your shot. And again, Sendor Clegan went along in front. It was run really slowly. Patter Merchant, Flicker of Hope in the yellow colours towards the inside will become the eventual winner. Kiss Will was a little bit hit and miss, but it was a race that was run really slowly. And with a mistake at not this fence, the next one, Kiss Will got himself to the back of the field. It turned into a dash and he could never peg back the couple in front. But I did think Flicker of Hope did well. Therese was in the middle. Therese had run behind July Flower at Limerick. Flicker of Hope was a bit slow at the second last. Kiss Will looks like he's coming to win, but I think that effort to get back in the race ultimately told on Case Will from the last home, because he rubbers down to the last like he's going to get involved, and he fades then on the run in. But good winner for Flicker of Hope from Patrick Merchant, but I would have thought there's more to come from the third horse, Case Will, anyway.
Yeah, I had some positive feelings towards definitely the winner and the third. Patter Merchant, who was never involved at Down Royal, was, I think, had position A throughout the race.
Absolutely.
I thought that Case Will chucked himself at a few fences.
Yeah, he definitely has a bit to improve on the jump in front. Same could be said of Kitzbühel, but I would say the Punchestown race was a good bit better than the Ferryhouse race, which was 24 hours earlier.
I agree. But to your point about Flicker of Hope, he was coming to get into the race when it turned into a sprint, and then when he landed so statically 2 out, he was set back. So I think he did well to get there.
Probably.
People might be surprised that we are not looking at the Grade 2 Florida Pearl won by Westport Cove, which we are not.
No, we didn't have time to fit everything in, but I think it was a Grade 2 by status.
Yeah, okay.
Personally.
So that's the reason, in case you were wondering. Let's head to Kempton on Monday, where Jericho de Repine was having another go at chasing and ran into Jacks Jr.
Yeah, and I think the winner is a horse that'll have there'll be plenty of fun to have with him. Jericho de Repine jumped out handy. The chestnut or the horse in orange in the middle, Miami Magic, he heads off to his left early in the straight, and Nico has to switch inside him. Look, Jericho de Repine jumped fine early in the contest, Lydia, and he got himself to the front, down to the winning post in the first circuit. Probably wouldn't like his behaviour here in the second at the bend past the stands. I mean, you can't say he's young and green. He's had plenty of runs. Why is he heading for the stable yard? Only that he wants to go home. Wouldn't particularly like it, but I was impressed with how Jacks Jr. jumped, and it was just here. Nico steadies up to the fifth last, and Jericho gets in, but that puts him on that back foot, and he's chasing to the fourth last where he makes a mistake, and then it's gone. Jacks Jr., it's race over. It's all over from there. Pings the third last, Jacks Jr., and was very good at the last as well. I thought the winner won really well. I would be disappointed with Jericho de Repine, but I'm sure I wouldn't mind owning the winner.
Yeah, I like the winner a lot, and I think we'll do better going up in trip. Maybe they might go back to hurdles with Jericho de Repine, but I agree with you. There's something of the night about him, isn't there? Because he was the one that refused to allow them to get the saddle on the one time as well. So, yeah, question mark about him. I should mention the 3-horse race, which also featured a Nicky Henderson-trained runner at Ascot. Thomas Moore won it, lucky place, finished third, banking one of the fences.
Did Nicky get a bill for the fence?
Going out like a light into the straight as well. I think, did he scope dirty afterwards?
I think I read that on it. I have written down here as well. Yeah, he did. But like how he stood up at the 4 fence lucky place, he shouldn't have stood up. Banked it, as you said, and he was ultimately disappointed. Thomas Moore won well from Jet to Vegas. Again, it looked like Thomas Moore looked like a horse actually that might be better going a little further.
Yeah, I think he might need to go right-handed though, looking at the form as a whole and also the way he jumped out to his right. Now, there's a lovely story in the Florida Pearl. Sorry, I've got the 2 Grade 2s mixed up, haven't I? This is the Florida Pearl. Oscar's brother.
Was the other one.
Yeah, sorry, apologies. This was a really nice story.
It was Daniel King and Conor King and Oscar's brother. And it was a competitive race on paper. Down the inside you had Rocky's Diamond, who you'll see in a few minutes in the Stayers Hurdle. We look back at that. But I kind of wondered about him as a chaser, and you can see him there reaching. His scope is probably pressed a bit over fences, Rocky's Diamond, whereas the winner, Oscar's brother, Daniel King, rolled on past the stands with him and really stretched his field. Now, the one that travelled best was Henry's Cocktail Divin, and travelled like the winner every step of the way. He probably didn't get home at this trip, and Oscar's brother's outstays, and Boss of the Brownies runs on from third. But I do think the second dropping back would have no trouble winning and could end up a player in the novice handicap come the festival at the middle distance, whereas the winner and the third, they look like horses that you could be keeping on side for Irish National, Scottish National, those kind of races in the springtime, or maybe the 3-6 novice handicap at the festival. But I do think they're strong stayers that'll win races. Yeah,
I liked Oscar's brother for something like the Irish National. One of only 2 horses in training for the former jockey Conor King. The other one, Grey Jude, won at Cork the following day, and it was nice because this winner was ridden by his brother Dan as well. I thought that was lovely. No power, I agree with you, for Rocky's Diamond. He wasn't a good jumper of a hurdle either.
He makes a better effort at a fence, but he does just lack a little bit of power. Could end up well handicapped. That is his third run relatively quickly.
Okay. Last bit of evidence that we're going to have a look at in the novice chasing section involves the mares. And this was Calaconte making quite a taking debut here. But the runner-up as well was quite smart.
Definitely caught my eye, Far From Nowhere. And you just look at her in the yellow cap versus Jade de Grugy outside her over the first 2 fences. And particularly at the second. I know with the sun and the rain it was impossible to see it. But Far From Nowhere jumped particularly well. I thought Jade de Grugy was just okay in front. And a shout out to Shane Fitzgerald as well. Riding Magic McColgan. Nearly came off at that fence and came down over the next 2 with no irons trying to get his stirrup back. He hadn't and eventually had to pull up, but a fair effort from Shane Fitzgerald to try and make every effort to get himself back in the contest. As you said, I was really taken with Paul Nolan's Far From Nowhere and how she jumped. She was brilliant in the yellow cap every step of the way. And when Calaconte pressed Jade de Grugy to the 4th last, Jade de Grugy was a little bit wild, gets in under the 3rd last when they're sprinting. And I thought Far From Nowhere actually had Calaconte at the 2nd last, but Jack Kennedy gets on top going to the last and Calaconte, and she wins as Jade de Grugy fades out of it. A good performance from Calaconte. She's a young mare. She's going the right direction. We've seen a couple of mares now come out this year, July Flower, to add her name to the mix, Calaconte. It's great to see mares chasing, and she looks like she's a future at it.
Yeah, definitely. And Jack Kennedy was saying that he thinks, I mean, she was a good hurdler, but he thinks she might be a bit better as a chaser as well. Now, I'm sure we'll be revisiting this division next week because we've got some significant novice chases over the coming few days. But in a moment, Josh will be rejoining us. So we've witted on for a while. Now we get to find out what you think about the King George because Josh has rejoined us. What are they saying out there?
The roadies have had their say this evening. Sam Beach up first. He really loves Django Bay when it comes to the King George. He reminds him of Shishkin. Is Django Bay like Shishkin?
I hope he doesn't have the same mind as Shishkin.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure if this was positive because last time I looked at the King George winner, Shishkin wasn't on there, but obviously he was going so well.
Hugely talented horse, obviously. Yeah. Different kinds of horses. Shishkin ended up being mercurial for me, whereas Django Bay is the opposite of that.
Yeah. God, no. Doesn't remind me of Shishkin.
That's a no, in case you're wondering, Sam.
Tony Roberts loves Banbridge. We can't discount last year's winner. Okay. He has been beaten 90 lengths on his last 2 starts combined. The only 2 starts we've seen him since the King George last year. Is he a ridiculous price at like 16, 20 to 1?
Definitely an each-way price anyway, isn't he? Because you'd imagine he'd be ridden pretty much the same way and could be picking up the pieces whatever happens. But I personally would probably prefer fast or slow for horses in that bracket in the race. But I won't disagree. I mean, Tony Robb thinks he's a chance Banbridge. Yeah, I can see the point.
I think the key bit I'd pick out is it's a better race mind this year. It is, and therefore I don't fancy him.
I think that's very fair. Ouija Board 00 says the price is now gone, but Django Bay was freely available between 4 and 5 to 1 after his Ascot romp. He thinks he'll go off a good bit shorter. He does not like the jukebox man. He thinks he should be double figures. And I suppose this poses the question, on all known form, how much does the jukebox man have to improve? What is his best performance? He beat Highland in the Corto Star. He beat Iroko, giving him £3. Is that his best?
Well, you could be standing here next Thursday and Highland could have won the Coral Gold Cup and that Kempton form would look a hell of a lot better. Now, Highland runs terrible in Newbury and that Kempton form looks weaker, so that is the evolution of form. I personally probably think of chasing, his Kempton form run is his best run. Best form, that's probably his best form. I think he has the potential, jukebox man. I personally would hate to be laying him at double figure odds now.
I agree. I think so as well.
If the board wants to take him on, he can, but I wouldn't be taking him on too much.
He went on to say that he needed to improve £20. He's currently rated 156, so that would make him one of the best horses around if he did that.
Well, theoretically, what's Gallic Warrior, etc., are probably in the 170s, aren't they? So technically, that £20 is probably right if you believe the other horses to be as good as their ratings.
But that is the leap from going from novice company into top class grade 1 company, and what you want to see, particularly in their first immersion of it, is can they deal with any part of it? And I think that's what we'll find out. I think we'll find out very early with the jukebox man.
No, I agree. Steve Ryder, our very own Steve Ryder, has had his say. He thought at the prices, he agreed with you, Ruby, that fast or slow might be the one to take a chance on. He jumped well in the John Durkan, matching Gallic Warrior's jump index of 9.1. It dipped below 15 seconds to the 18th furlong, but after such a long layoff, he's willing to forgive him and the race will suit him well. Is he being overlooked? You 100%?
Yeah, I would think he is, and I would say even the run jumping wise, I thought he looked a little bit rusty jumping. I think with the run under his belt, it would have blown away a few cobwebs and sharpened him up. So yeah, I do think he's a great price. Fast or slow.
I really like Fast or Slow. I think he's a thorough stayer. I'm not sure Kempton will be his bag. I'm obviously missing something because Steve thinks differently, you think differently, but I wonder about the King George for him. I prefer other targets myself, which isn't to say that I don't agree. He looked a bit rusty, still retains all his talent and is a very good horse.
No, I agree. Our final question then comes from Andrew Flynn. He thinks none of the horses that we saw at the weekend will be winning. He's keeping the faith with Ile Francais.
Oh my goodness. Well, I like a positive outlook on life, don't you? Mm-hmm. I mean, and I'd obviously genuinely hope it would be amazing to see Ile Francais come back to his Quarto Star best. We haven't seen him anywhere near that since his second in the King George, and even then I didn't feel it was quite, you know.
Yeah. I'd say he better hope Santa Claus comes.
Well, I was thinking, will he even run? The latest is he will.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Tom George is saying that he will run.
As soon as you say that can't or it won't happen, horses always go and prove you're wrong. But I'm afraid I just can't see that one.
So tune in after Christmas to see Ile Francais winning the King George. Thanks to Josh for that. We're going to move on to the hurdlers.
All right, lads, it's been a long day. Last thing, our ad slot for the road to Cheltenham. Patrick, I want you to look into that camera there and say, hi, I'm Patrick Mullins and he's Ruby Walsh. And if you enjoy his analysis on Road to Cheltenham, you might like Paddy Power's From the Horse's Mouth podcast, updated weekly and available wherever you get your podcasts. Very straightforward.
All right, sounds easy.
Ruby, all I want you to do is look happy and smile. So, Patrick, if you give it a go in your own time, that'd be cool.
Hi, I'm Ruby Walsh. And that's Patrick Mullins.
No, okay. You can't even get your own name. Amateur jockey, amateur broadcaster. I don't know what that is. Forget about it.
Welcome back to the eternal sunshine of the studio. We're going to have a look at the hurdlers now, and we're going to start by refreshing your mind about where we were in the staying division at the end of last season, or the summit of last season, I think, which was the Paddy Power Stayers Hurdle at the festival.
Yeah, probably the summit of it. And I went to go Gallic Gowl Road, booked out and went to go good enough pace in the Stayers Hurdle last year. Rocky's Diamond went to follow him. Bob Ollinger stopped in at the back. Crambo fell at halfway and brought down by home by the Lee. But I don't know, Lydia, I couldn't foresee this race panning out the way it did beforehand. The Wall Park and Chupu down the outside. Bob Ollinger, Rachel Blackmore follows them in, and we've seen lucky plays. Franciscan Rock, Rocky's Diamond all chasing this year. Gowl Road even ran well in a handicap hurdle at the Paddy Power meeting in November, but Bob Ollinger won the Stayers Hurdle. Not something I thought I'd be saying this time last year.
Jauntily as well.
Yeah, he did, but what does that ultimately, when you look at it, what does it mean? Did they go a bit steady? Did it turn into a bit of a dash? Did Bob Ollinger ultimately fulfil the potential he showed as a novice hurdler? He went chasing and it didn't work out for him. If he had stayed over hurdling, would he have won more hurdles? I don't know.
Chupa's quite lightly raced over his career of late, isn't he? But he started very young.
He did, started as a 4-year-old, and it's not inconceivable to be thinking he could have peaked and be on the other way down. Most horses only have a couple of seasons, don't they?
As ever, the Stayers Hurdle looks very gettable, and hence lots of people fancy getting it. Let's have a look at the betting. They're coming from all directions, as they tend to in this race. Chupu is the 130 favourite. Ballyburn, hello, 7-2. Bob Ollinger, 14-1, along with Honesty Policy and the Yellow Clay, those latter two from Gordon Elliott's yard. Let's have a look at the Yellow Clay in action. This is him being beaten by the veteran, the mighty Colonel Mustard, in a slog for the Lismullen Hurdle. Yeah, and good old Colonel Mustard, when he eventually won a race in Sligo, he figured out he liked winning. Jatara went along with Maxim. The Yellow Clay sat in behind. Now, Gordon said he was never happy with the Yellow Clay. I didn't see that through the early part of the race until they got to what should have been the fourth last hurdle. And when he lands here, all of a sudden Jack was starting to poke at him, and you were thinking it's a bit soon for him to be off the bridle. Gets involved with Jatara down to the second last. But because Navan now only has 2 hurdles in its really long home straight when there should be a third one,
this turns into a slog. And you were talking about, or people were wondering about Factifile and Gallic Warrior from the John Durkan. I think when you look at the yellow clay here, this is more reminiscent of Betfair Chase last year. These horses are trotting. These, like, in fairness to Colonel Mustard, he's won a Lismullen Hurdle. That is entitled to be the highlight of his season. But I'd say when the yellow clay pulled up, Gordon was thinking, he probably had a harder race than I wanted him to have. And, you know, then again, Navan with only 2 hurdles in the straight.
Why?
They took one out because of the undulations in the straight in Navan to reduce fallers. But I also think that it's making, and they put it in the back straight or around the bottom. But I just think it's too long with only 2 jumps. And you see that, I think the finish of that race shows you that it needs another jump.
Yeah, they look utterly exhausted, and in a different way, that isn't great to look at either, is it?
No, and it was testing ground, but, you know, and they went a solid gallop, but that to me is a race that you think, oh, we'll leg it over that, more so than the John Durkan.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about Gordon Elliott. Let's talk about Woodhoo, who won at Ascot on Saturday. I loved Gordon's comment. She's a great bit of stuff. She is, isn't she? She
is a dinger, and she's a mare that's still improving. Obviously has age on her side, lightly raced, ran into Lossiemouth at Aintree last year and made Lossiemouth pull out all the stops at Aintree last year. She's still improving. I thought Danny Gilligan gave her a really good ride in Ascot. Now, you could tell he always felt he had the mare under him, but he timed it well. He covered the horses on both sides of the track, whichever one was going to go away, and he went and followed the right one and delivered her really on cue.
She's quite deceptive, isn't she? Because I think some people felt that on first look that she made hard work of it. I don't think she did at all.
No, I don't think she did either.
No.
And it's interesting, Gordon is not ruling anything out for her.
Well, before the race, he said to Matt Chapman ITV Racing, I'd be shocked if she were a champion hurdle mare. 2 days later, he was neither ruling out the champion hurdle or the stayers hurdle, but listen to the key part of the sentence. But right now, if the races run in a couple of weeks, I'd be thinking mare's hurdle. She'll run in the mare's hurdle, won't she?
I would have thought so.
You would have thought so, wouldn't you? But we could have a potential stayers hurdle candidate in Cabral du Mathan, who routed a handicap hurdle field at Haydock on Saturday.
He did, off a mark of 140. He's only a 5-year-old. He was backed, like defeat was out of the question, Lydia.
And it was.
And it was. Obviously, the 4-6s booked out, made a good gallop and got plenty clear. It was interesting that Harry Skelton, early enough in the back straight, wanted to cover that move of Sean Bones, and Cabral du Mathan jumped himself into a good position at the 4th last hurdle, and Harry had Sean covered then, committed him plenty early. But do you know what confused me a little bit about this was, like, he was back like defeat was out of the question. He looked like he had a good few pounds in hand, but I was thinking, why did they waste it on a race that was only worth 26,000 to the winner?
It was an all or nothing move. It's now graded company or nothing, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, I was thinking, like, why didn't they keep him for a bigger pot?
Yeah.
They
didn't.
No.
They didn't.
It was good performance, though.
Contrast that with Grey Dawning.
Yeah. Even the rides. And look, maybe Harry was trying to figure out, is he a stayers hurdle horse? And look, what did he get for that? Probably a 14 or 15. He's up into the mid-150s anyway. He's halfway to being a stayers hurdle horse anyway.
Yeah, more of that took in this race, I think, en route to the stayers hurdle. And this horse will be going to the Relkeel next. Now, we've got some action in this division coming up at the weekend. Let's have a look at the Hatton's Grace betting, shall we? This has been Chihupu's starting point for the previous 3 seasons, and he is the favourite ahead of Ballyburn, who we will discuss at length in a moment. So, Chihupu, what are you expecting from him this time around?
I don't know. He downed Honeysuckle and Classical Dream 2 years ago. Then Imperial Pass was no match for Lossiemouth in a complete sprint last year. I think he will get stalled ground at Ferryhouse this year, but I don't know. Was he as good a horse last year as he was the year before? I'm not so sure.
I think he was as good last year, but he didn't quite get his ground that puts other people in difficulty, so soft and heavy. I think he operates at exactly the same level, whereas other horses underperform in those kind of conditions.
Quite possible.
But he has an intriguing rival
Ballyburn.
in the shape of Ballyburn. Ballyburn, discuss.
Ballyburn, it didn't blow either of us away when he won over Fences and Punchestown last year on debut. Dropped back then to Kempton, where a certain Sergino just completely put him in his box and out-jumped him pretty much every step of the way. So he came back to Ireland, went up and trip back to the DRF, where he faced Champ Kiley and Croke Park. Imperial Pass behind him. I think there was Grade 1 winners behind him and beside him, and he was tough. He jumped solid that day. Went to Cheltenham. He was pretty sharp price favoured for the Brown Advisory. He was far too keen. Never switched off in a really slowly run race. Jumped into the ditch on the way up the hill on the first circuit, and that was pretty much race over for him. Did well to stay on, never got involved, fell out the back of the shot on the run to the third last. Lecky Watson, Better Days Ahead, Dancing City. He was disappointed. Back to Punchestown and was no match for Champ Kiley, who he had beaten comprehensively at the Dublin Racing Festival. It was completely the other way around at this meeting, and Danny Mullins was always galloping over Paul Townend. So he goes back to hurdles. We haven't seen him over hurdles, of course, since he won the
Bearing Bingham. It's safe to call it that.
That's the one. But you kind of wonder then, how strong was this? Jimmy Desailly, yeah, he's won a Corran Cup since. Il Atlantique has won one, maybe 2 chases at most. Mercury, Predator's Gold, I think they've ran once. You probably have a few questions to answer, Ballyburn.
Yeah, I take all of those points, and I do think they're fair, but I suppose I look at the way in which Willie Mullins and the rest of the Cheltenham team felt about Ballyburn, or certainly were conveying that they felt about Ballyburn. I mean, after he won the Bearing Bingham, Willie Mullins was saying that was a champion hurdle performance to him, but he's got the size and scope for a chaser. He seems to have had a remarkably sharp fall from grace. And now he's running in the Stayers Hurdle. And what did your dad say about Stayers Hurdle? No one wants to breed a Stayers Hurdle winner.
No, they don't, but they don't mind owning them all the same. But yeah, it is. I don't know, he never struck me as a champion hurdle horse, but I did think he would be a Grade 1 chaser, and it didn't work out for him, so you have to look somewhere else.
And how does that feel inside the Willie Mullins team, you know, when you've got this expectation of a horse? Because it seemed externally consistent all season.
Yeah, fences aren't for him, Lydia, but I say this, they still think he's a big engine.
OK, does he win the Hatton's Grace?
I think he will, yeah.
Stamina? Has he got enough of it?
2.5.
Yeah?
Be fine.
He'll be fine. 3 miles? Not so much.
Settle better.
Yeah. Yeah. OK, good point. Good point. OK, and of course we've got the long distance hurdle Grade 2 at Newbury tomorrow as well. We've got the likes of Imposed Trois and the trio that dominated the West Yorkshire hurdle running in that, along with Hewick and Ahoy Senior. So that'll be fascinating. We'll talk about that this time next week. But now we're going to sign off with the 2 mile hurdlers, building up to the Fighting Fifth on Saturday, of course, but starting with the Morgiana that we saw last Saturday. Now, this is a fascinating race because it was really one-sided, and yet I think there were loads to learn from it.
Yeah, there was, and Paul was really positive on Lossiemouth, booked her out in front. Iranzi Nadawi and Glen Killen went along behind her, but she was doing 29, 30 miles an hour, and to be honest with you, and you watch Paul switching his whip here as she was going a bit to her left, she didn't come alive there when Paul switched his whip, so that's a cruising speed that she's probably comfortable at, and she did have a little guess, 4th last hurdle. We saw her doing this before at 2 miles. Guesses at this hurdle and just steps at it without any commitment. It's kind of a half-hearted step even, and then Paul upped the ante on her heading to the 3rd last. Iranzi was beaten really early and he looked like he wanted another half a mile at least. Nadawi tried to keep up the ghost, so did Glen Killen is running an absolute cracker, but I was interested even with Paul's body language when he jumps to 2nd last and he starts to open her up to the bend. He starts squeezing her here, but he never let off then.
Why?
He was afraid to let her slow down, and he does have a look, so he knows he's 8 or 10 in front, but it's probably suggesting to him that if I slow this mare down, will I get her going again? He does have a look here and it's over, but if you keep watching him here, he keeps squeezing her all the way down to the last hurdle, and it's probably because she wasn't quickening, she's only maintaining. I'd say if he'd sat down the first time when she quickened up, he'd have sat back up. The fact that she didn't, she only maintained, probably meant he kept squeezing her all the way down. She got a little bit tired from the last home, but look, she's going, as Willie said, she'll go to Leopardstown. At Christmas, you imagine she'll go back to the DRF in Leopardstown, and that's probably because what is there in Ireland to beat her? Probably isn't anything. But ultimately where she ends up in March will depend on what happens, I'd say, in Newcastle and Kempton in the next couple of weeks.
It's funny you should say that because Paul Townend had a similar view. He was speaking to Gary O'Brien after the Morgiana, and he started by talking about that guess that Ruby was talking about.
Probably my fault. You know, she was taking it in a little bit in front, and it was kind of, you know, go on then if you want, and she took a chance at it, but, you know, she came for me, and the good ones are meant to come for you. In a more competitive race, you'd be attacking that stride and she's used to taking them on that stride, you know. And
obviously, you rode her from the front today, you've held her up in small fields before. Is there a kind of a formula you think suits best?
She's simple. You know, she's very simple. It looked the obvious thing to do today was she stays and she was the best in the race, so we'd just done that. But yeah, you can go back to riding her the other way probably as well, but it was good to get a feel off her in front as well.
And just final question, in your heart of hearts, do you feel she's better at 2.5, or is she equally effective at 2?
I don't think we learned that today, to be honest, because it wasn't competitive enough up there. But look, she's a very, very good filly, and you know, we'll know a lot more in a week's time, I think. Yeah.
Paul, thanks a lot.
Yeah,
Chase.
thanks.
What did you take from what Paul just said there?
I would agree with him. You learn a lot more. It's what's to beat her, but like if the New Lion or Constitution Hill or whatever it is, I think she's a 2.5 miler.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I was about to push you into saying it, because while you were talking over the Morgiana, everything you were saying was saying to me, this is not a 2-miler of Grade 1 champion hurdle standard.
I don't think she is. That doesn't mean she won't win a champion hurdle, because it depends on what kind of champion hurdle you have. But I do think she's a better filly at 2.5.
But everybody could be fooled into thinking she's a 2-miler. I'm talking about people watching on, and maybe people internally as well. And events could push her there, depending on what goes around her.
Ultimately could, and that's the beauty of it. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, and everyone will have an opinion. But mine is that she's better at 2.5 miles.
Right. Key race coming up this Saturday, and that is the Fighting Fifth at Newcastle. And look at that for a lineup. Constitution Hill looking to prove he can still jump, 11-8. The New Lion looking to prove he's good enough for this kind of league, 6-4, impressive at the Cheltenham Festival last season. And Amsterdam, well, he's got even more to prove, stepping into the big league on seasonal debut and going over to Newcastle for it at 9-4. Let's start by looking at the New Lion's win in the Turner's Novices Hurdle.
Yeah, and it was impressive. Obviously, he had Potter's Charm up towards the front, the Yellow Clay, Final Demand, Kate Doughty on the outside. He travelled really well down the inside. Economical jumper. Now, does have to ask a question at the second last hurdle, the next one. Harry gives him a squeeze down the inside, and he just about gets there. He is brave, but he is low and slick as well, and knocks the top off of that hurdle. Then goes through on the inside, gets stopped by the Yellow Clay, has to wait for a little bit, but he's really brave on him. Rounds off the bend, and Harry half thinks about going down Jack's inner, but Paul is leaning in, so he decides, you know what, I'll just come round him. I'm going to beat them anyway. Switches him to the right, commits him to the last, and the horse was brave, and he gets really long at this hurdle. But I guess, I know ultimately you go on about Constitution Hill, but hurdlers do have to take chances at times, and this fella, you have to have that commitment.
I was going to say, that jump reminded me very much of Constitution Hill when he was in his pomp, and hopefully he will gain it. The commitment that he has.
You have to be on the edge and be committed, and he's a very good horse. Now, I know you might argue the Yellow Clay was disappointing in it is Mullen, but look, if you're wondering, can he be a 2-miler? Well, top speed, yeah, his top speed is fast enough. He's able to do 36.5 miles an hour. Lossie did 37.3. That was over 2.5. Constitution Hill has only ever got to 34, but that's because when you come down in distance, you go a higher tempo all the way, and that's probably best shown by the average entry speeds. You look at Constitution Hill, 31.15. It's up around there. William Money was in the Supreme. They were averaging 32 miles an hour. Like, you can get up to 36 miles an hour in speed, but pace is the thing, and it's how long you can sustain it for. So the New Lion is probably going to have to do something, or will have to do something new at the weekend. He will have to go a higher tempo for longer and sustain it. And, you know, 2-mile hurdling is about pace. It's about maintaining tempo. And it'll be interesting to see if he can do it. It's unknown. He probably can, but nobody knows if he can.
No. Amsterdam is the other unknown, a big unknown in the race, relatively inexperienced.
And this doesn't, I mean, he was impressive here. He was very free. Gallic Conti, Bottler's Secret down the inside, and he absolutely bolts in. This was at Fairyhouse last year, and he was impressive. That was his first run for Willie Mullins. He'd been off the track a long time, flattens the last hurdle, but lands galloping and quickens up. And he had Gallic Conti behind him. He went from there, and he went to Nace, and won after that. Again, dropped in at the back, so you'd expect him, 5-runner race at Newcastle on Saturday. I can see him sitting in last. There's no doubt about that. And whether he's good enough or not, time is only going to tell. I mean, again, it's impossible to tell off this. This form is not going to be anywhere near good enough, but he will be keen. He's a strong traveller. He's a brave jumper as well, and look, he'll turn in on their tails. Whether he's good enough to pick up then and go and beat them or not, only time is going to tell.
Vibe-wise, it's just him making the journey across to take on the best of British, whatever that might be. On his seasonal debut, coming out of this, it seems like a big ask. It seems like a very big question he's being asked straight away.
It is, but he is probably he's keen and he's plenty keen at home, so he's probably plenty forward. No doubt about that. He would be doing a little bit more than everything else.
Are we overlooking Golden Ace?
I think we are, or maybe not. But look, she was a fitting winner of last year's champion hurdle the way it all happened, and she was lucky at times too. She could so easily have been behind Constitution Hill and got brought down, and Statement, for whatever reason, bent over on his known neck and fell to the right when he should have fallen to the left and brought her down as well. So she got the rub of the green, but she is the current champion.
She is, and Nemean Line also in the lineup, the National Spirit winner of last season. He was supplemented for the race, and of course Constitution Hill. This is where we get to find out whether he's still got his mojo. Exciting weekend racing coming up, but I should also flag that not only will we be reviewing that in next week's show, we're also going to open the book on the Novice Hurdlers. I think it's time that we have a look at that.
That'll be a big book.
I'm giving you all early warning, so get your thinking hats on about the Novice Hurdlers so that you're able to join in the conversation this time next week. Thank you very much for your thoughts, Ruby. Thank you very much for watching Road to Cheltenham. We will see you this time next week.
Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.